guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be doing a discussion video on how I rate books on Goodreads. I think it was a couple of months ago on my channel now, I kind of asked you guys, are you interested in hearing my thoughts on it? And I've been having a think about it over the last few weeks especially. And what I wanted to do was not just tell you guys, you know, what I give 1 star to and what I give 5 stars to, but also kind of discuss, you know, why we rate books and should we rate books and all of those kinds of things. So I'm going to start the video off by just going through how do I rate those books, so what is a 1 star, a 2 star, etc., and then give you an example of each of those. So we'll start at the bottom with the negative stuff, and if something is a 1 star read, it's quite rare. In fact, I think I've been on Goodreads for 2 years now, and I've only ever given one book 1 star, and so if something has to be really poorly written for me, and I think that's the key really, that I didn't really enjoy the writing, or there's some sort of serious point of contention, so I've got a serious issue with something in the book, you know, how a theme is being explored, or how a character is being portrayed, or something kind of along those lines. And I'm not really finding anything to appreciate about the story or the characters or the writing or anything like that. And a good example of that, well, I say a good example, I've only rated one book 1 star. It was a book called The Servant Boy by Risha Ashar, I think that's how you pronounce it. This was a book that I was sent for review on my Kindle. The author kind of approached me and asked me whether I would read it, and so I read it kind of over the course of a month or so, and yeah, it just was not great for me at all. It needed some serious editing. I don't think it had been through an editing process at all. There was nothing really for me to appreciate about the characters or the story. I kind of found the whole thing a little bit silly. So yeah, moving on to 2 star reads. I've given a few more of these out. A 2 star read for me is a book that I didn't really enjoy it, but I could appreciate some of its qualities. So there was some good writing in there. I could sort of see what the author was doing, but it just didn't work for me. So a good example of that is First Love by Gwendolyn Riley. This was shortlisted for the Bailey's Women's Prize this year, and yeah, I just didn't get it. It wasn't for me at all. I could appreciate what she was doing with the writing and why she was doing it, but the style didn't work for me in the slightest. I wasn't invested in any of the characters, and yeah, it just kind of really wasn't the book for me. So needless to say, 1 and 2 star reads are definitely books that I'm not going to be keeping on my shelf. Hence why I can't show you a physical copy of First Love, because I have already unhauled it and donated it, perhaps to somebody else to appreciate a bit more than me. Then moving on to 3 star reads, this is where it gets a lot more positive for me. A 3 star read is definitely not a throwaway book. It's not a negative rating for me at all. So a 3 star rating for me means that I'm glad that I read it. I did enjoy it. It was engaging, but I had some sort of issue with it, or some sort of point of contention. So a good example of that is, just got it over here, Codename Verity, and this is by Elizabeth Wine. And I'm kind of really disappointed that I only rated this 3 stars, because I've heard quite a few people talk about the fact that they love this book, and I did really enjoy the story. I did enjoy what was going on in here, did connect to a lot of the characters, and if you've seen me talk about this before, you'll know that there was a moment at the end where I sobbed. However, it took an awful long time for me to get into the book. I wasn't engaged until, I would say, at least 1/3 of the way through. There was an awful lot of plane and flying terminology in here that kind of put me off a little bit, didn't really keep me engaged in the story. And I would say it wasn't until the very end where I kind of connected emotionally to the characters. And I think that's a real shame, because thinking about the subject matter here and the themes that Elizabeth Wine is exploring, you know, they should be important. I should have connected with them a lot more than what I actually did, but alas I didn't. So 3-star reads are a bit hit and miss with keeping on my shelf. This one I have kept on my shelf obviously, and quite a few others I have. So sometimes I keep them, but sometimes I don't. I suppose it depends on what kind of a 3-star read it is, whether it would be a book that I'd like to recommend to somebody. Moving on to 4-star books. 4-star books for me are books that I really enjoyed. I thought there was great writing, they engaged me all of the way through. Yeah, and I was just engaged with most of the elements in there. And a good example of that is The Lake House by Kate Morton. It's the book I read over the summer, and it's the first Kate Morton book that I have read, but I've got 3 others on my shelf now, and I'm really looking forward to picking all of those up. I thought the writing in here was really good. It was cleverly structured, it kept me engaged all the way through. I really appreciated the characterisation and some of the themes that it was exploring. The only thing that I didn't like about it was that I thought it was a bit too neatly tied up at the end of the book, so that stopped me from giving it a higher rating. Yeah, just it was too convenient for me at the end. So, but I would definitely recommend this to other people, and like I said, I'm really looking forward to picking up some more of Kate Morton's writing, because like I said, 4-star ratings for me are books that I really enjoyed. And then lastly, 5-star books. These are books that I can't put down, that I am hooked from the very beginning of picking it up, and I'm totally engaged and immersed in what's going on. They're also books that speak to me in some sort of way. They speak to me on an emotional level, so I am really connected with the characters, or I'm emotionally attached to the themes. That kind of sounds a little bit weird, but I think you kind of know what I mean. And then they stay with me, so they're books that I think about later on. They're books that are at the forefront of my mind when I think about my favourite books of all time. And then lastly, there's just amazing writing in them. I mean, they don't have to be literary for me in order to give them 5 stars, and I'll talk a little bit about that sort of aspect of it later, but I have to really appreciate the writing in there. So a good example of that is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. I was hooked from the very beginning with this. Totally immersed in the story, in the world, and in Agnes's character. There is beautiful writing in this, the descriptions of the landscape in Iceland, but also the characterisation when it came to Agnes's character and sort of the family that she was staying with and things like that. It was just really immersive, and I've recently bought Hannah Kent's newest book, I think, is it called The Good People? Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to reading that and hoping that it's going to be as much of a good book as this one was. So that's all of the different reasons why I give books all of the different star ratings. One of the things that people do quite a lot on Goodreads, and I have done this as well, is give half-star ratings. Obviously on the actual Goodreads page and on the app you can't click half a star, but you can kind of put 3.5 stars or 4.5 stars within the review box down the bottom. I personally do give half-star ratings, and I know some people are against doing that, but I feel like sometimes it's really hard to categorise a book and just kind of give it a flat rating, if that makes sense in any sort of way. I think because, you know, some books teeter between 2 ratings, and if you're giving it 3 but really it was 3.5, or if you're giving it 4 but really it was 3.5, there is a definite difference between those ratings. So having the ability to rate books half a star, or 3.5 or 4.5 or whatever it was, is really important, I think. And I can't believe that Goodreads haven't added that feature to their site, because I think it would be a really useful one to have. I'm not convinced about people giving things like 4.25 or 4.75. I think that's going a step too far. But half-star ratings is definitely something that I do and agree with. And that kind of leads me on to think about some of the drawbacks of rating books. And I think one of those is this idea of putting a book in a box. When you rate something, you're labelling it in some sort of sense. And I don't always think that that is a good idea, but is always easy. When I did my October wrap up, I talked about the fact that I read Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, and that I found it really hard to rate. One of the reasons for that being because it was his life experience, and because I'm coming from a completely different life experience to his, and categorising that kind of life experience seemed wrong in some sort of sense. Ratings can seem also a little arbitrary. You're putting a simple number on the work of a professional author, and that seems to me sometimes to be a little bit arbitrary. I can't really think of any other way to describe it. So I think sometimes that can be, they can be sort of the drawbacks of rating books. But I think another drawback of rating books is that there are so many different genres of book out there, and what you give 4 stars to, is a 4-star different if you're reading a YA book or if you're reading an adult literary book? And there's that kind of line to think about. There's that kind of, should you be rating a book based on its genre and its intended audience, or should you be rating a book based on your own personal reading experience and where you're coming from at that particular time when you're reading it? Personally, I read a range of different books. If you've been subscribed to my channel for a long time, you'll know that I don't sort of tend to stick to one category of books. I've done sort of some literary fiction stuff on my channel where I've read book prizes, but when I'm having a normal reading month, I'll read classics, I'll read non-fiction, I'll read sort of general adult fiction, I'll read YA, children's books, that sort of thing. And I really love reading a variety of different things. So, there's this argument, is there a difference between rating a children's book 5 stars and rating a literary fiction book 5 stars? And I would say that there is a difference, but if your reasons behind doing it are well thought through, then there's nothing wrong with that. So for example, I gave Franklin's Flying Bookshop, Jen Campbell's new children's book, 5 stars. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic picture book. I thought, thinking about its intended audience, that kids would absolutely love it. It was so well illustrated, the story was so well thought through. And that's why I gave that 5 stars. If I think about a book that I have read for a book prize, for example, Lincoln in the Bardo got 5 stars from me from the Man Booker shortlist, and of course it's won since then. Because I thought the writing was amazing, I thought it was really well researched, I really appreciated the style that he had written it in, and thought that the themes running through it were really, really important, that I got a good glimpse into that sort of particular time period, and that was great. So they were very different reasons, but to me there's no problem with giving both of those 5 stars. So yeah. For me personally, I love being a member of Goodreads. It appeals to my ordered and organised way of doing things in life. because I talked about the idea of categorising books and putting books in boxes if you rate them, but kind of that appeals to my kind of personality. So yeah, I would love to have a chat with you in the comments below. How do you rate books? Are you a member of Goodreads, and how do you rate books on that website? And you know, what's your opinion on some of the things that I've talked about today? You know, that idea of different genres and putting books in boxes and all of that kind of stuff. Love to have a chat with you as always. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.